Hey, Rebel Bankers, this is your host, Chris Noggle, and welcome back to the Real Estate Money School. And thank you. I'm here with Jack, and Jack is a multifamily expert. His business is high return real estate. And, I had Jack on Money School TV, and he just blew my mind with his knowledge. So we're going to get into Jack's story, a little bit about how he does what he does and the things he's doing right now to mitigate what's happening in this economic collapse or whatever you want to call it. But I wanted to talk to all of you a little bit about your journey to becoming a rebel banker. Your journey to becoming a rebel banker starts with knowledge, but then it finishes, and most importantly, it is application of knowledge. Because if you're just getting knowledge, it's not going to get you there. You got to apply knowledge, and that knowledge application starts in a lot of ways. You got to have some fun with it too. You really, when you're learning, make sure it's something you really want. If one of the things you want to learn and apply is where all the money is for your real estate deals, well, the first application you should do is grab a copy of my book, The Private Money Guide, which is where all the money is for all your real estate deals. So grab a copy of that book, or maybe you want to take back control of your money and you really, really want to be the bank. Well, one of the things that we just did is finished up our second book, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. So grab a copy of this book. It's fresh off the press, and this one will teach you how to be the bank and what the secrets of the wealthy really are and how to map them out for yourself. So those are two great ways for you guys to begin your journey to becoming a rebel banker. So go out there in these hard times, be the leader, be the light in the darkness, and blaze your own path. And it starts right here. So Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell everybody what it is you do, what your business looks like. And then once we're done with that, let's dive back into your past and tell them how you got here.
That's perfect. So today, currently, our focus is value-add multifamily apartment buildings. So value-add being where we're buying a property where there's some sort of financial inefficiency, because apartment buildings, which is obviously commercial real estate, they are valued based upon the amount of net operating income that they produce. Income minus expenses, NOI. So we're looking for properties that have low occupancy, low rents, deferred maintenance, poor management, absentee owners, or a combination of all that, where we can buy it at a wholesale discounted price, remodel the property, raise rents, lower expenses, and then approve the value of the building because of the cash flow, not because of appreciation. So that's what
no, and I know everybody's very, hot to trot on multifamilies because we all want mailbox money. We all want passive income, but it's not exactly the easiest business. And one of the things, I used to be big into the multifamily space, and we sold most of those properties when we really started flipping a lot. But one of the things that I found difficult was finding the deals. I mean, do you guys have trouble finding deals? And how do you think that's going to change right now with everything that's happening?
Yeah, it's a great question. There was a lot of barriers and a lot of challenges in order for me to be able to get enough traction in this business, because, if you want to flip houses or wholesale, there's a lot more properties available. There's obviously a lot more single families and multifamilies. We're also dealing oftentimes, direct to owners. So when I want to make the transition from doing single families to multifamily, unfortunately, my experience, the properties I own really didn't count, because when I'm dealing with a commercial broker, they want to know what your commercial experience is. They don't care about your single family background. So we started off finding some deals off market, finding full rent signs, calling the owners. We also did a very extensive basically owner tracking program, where we would get a list of all the buildings from the county. We would take that list, we would pull all the LLCs. We would then go to the county recorder's website, where mortgages are publicly recorded. I'm in the northwest, Cleveland, Ohio, so our mortgages are public information. I realize not all states are like that. So we would go to the website, we would find, and we would pull all the principals who are signing on the mortgages, which would be the owners. So then we pulled a bunch of phone numbers, did a lot of calls, a lot of mailings, picked up some properties that way. And then just in the course of doing that and making myself more available, making broker relationships, sending gifts, open up conversations, combination of that, a lot of time, and eventually allowed us to start getting on-market deals with brokers, and then eventually off-market deals with brokers. years. So that was kind of the transition and how to get deal flow. But realistically, it took a couple of years before we started getting some traction. So it's not an overnight quick thing. It requires a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of persistence.
Yeah. So let's, I know we've talked a lot because we had you on Money School TV and you did some great, trainings. They're actually a 4-part training. Let's go back. We didn't get a chance to tell, the audience how you got here because, very rarely do people in multifamily just fall into multifamily. So what was that journey like for you? Did you have any struggles? Where'd the money come from? I mean, people look at multifamily and they say, well, I'd love to do multifamily, but that's a lot of money and I don't know how to find the money for that. So tell us your journey and how all those pieces came together for you.
Absolutely. So there's like 3 barriers to get into multifamily. One is deal flow. Second is capital, because instead of bringing 30,000 on the table, we're bringing 300,000 to the table or $1.5 million to the table. And then we also have to have a net worth that's equal to the loan amount. So if I'm buying a $10 million property, I need to have a net worth of $10 million. And those are definitely some pretty significant barriers. So rewinding back, when I graduated from high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't cut out for college. It wasn't, and I couldn't sit at a desk. And my ADHD just didn't allow that. So actually I had an uncle that suggested becoming a firefighter paramedic. And I thought that sounded really cool, which it was. So I pursued that. And then in the process of doing that, I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that book it zinged me. Like, it really captivated my interest in the points that were made about financial literacy, financial education, creating passive income, like how in our educational system, we're punished by making mistakes. We get D's, we get F's, but and by going through that process, we're almost like afraid to make mistakes, where we don't want to risk something, where the reality is we only learn by making mistakes. That's how we all learn. So that book really captivated me. So in the process of becoming a firefighter paramedic, I saw the advantages of getting into real estate. I went a different direction. I had an interest in building new custom homes, becoming a home builder. I had no background. I had no experience. So I bought every single book on Amazon that I could find on the subject of how to build a house, how to general contract a house, how to be an owner builder, how to wire a house. Actually, the first house I did, I completely wired it, put the electric panels in. So what was neat in that experience, though, is I was able to take something that I had no experience with and teach myself how to do it, how to be resourceful. And then from there, we did that for a while. We did that till 2008 when the market blew up. And at that point, new houses weren't selling. Builders and developers were going bankrupt. House flips, were challenging for finding end buyers because of, but what provided an opportunity was buy and hold properties. There was substantial discounts in properties. And as people were getting evicted and getting foreclosed and divorced and all the other life events that were going on, they needed a place to stay. So we were buying properties in an area of Cleveland called Maple Heights, Garfield Heights. It's like a C-class market. Houses prior to the crash were selling.
Can I stop you right there? You said something just a moment ago that I want to make sure that people take note is the C-class apartments. So if we go back to 2009 and we really look at what happened in 2009 and then we mimic that to what potentially could happen in this economic situation or crisis that we're in, C-class is really what you want. Because A-class apartments, you're going to see the rents come down in those and the values of those buildings come down. B-class, it's kind of hit or miss, but in 2009, those prices of those vacancies went up and those prices of rental went down. But then there was the C-class, the ones nobody else want that you were buying that went up in value, rents went up in value, and everything went up. So appreciation went up. I mean, and this isn't an economic collapse that this happened. Like, is that why you did this? And how, like, I didn't mean to throw your story off. I just feel it's so important to talk about C-class because that's the stuff that people avoid. They're like, I don't want those. But that's what you want right now.
Everything is a risk, and the risk of that is also depending on the return and the dollar point that you're buying at. So these were actually single family houses that I actually started off in. And prior to the crash, these houses were selling between $100,000 to $120,000. They were like your typical Midwest 1950s style bungalows. And the first property that I bought at $60,000. It was a 50% discount. And then as the time went on, those houses, this is absurd, we were buying them as low as $4,000 a house. Now, mind you, the houses were totally devastated. Like we had to put 30, 35 back into them, totally rebuild them. But at the end of the day, I'm all in at $40,000. I'm receiving the same rent as I would in a B-class market, but that B-class property would sell for $100,000. So I could have 3 houses in a C-class market for the 1 house in the B-class market. So I was making triple the rent, and I was just also protected just by some economic scales. If I had 1 tenant that moved out of those 3 rentals for $100,000, I'm 2/3 occupied. If I had 1 tenant in that B-class property and they move out, I go from 100% occupied to 100% vacant. So, today we look back at this and say I'm a genius, but at that time, everybody in my circle thought I was crazy. Why would you buy in that market? Well, because I'm buying at such an advantageous price point that there is so much cash flow, and we're protected and isolated. Cash flow is what protects us. If we have a property in an A-class market, you're making $100 per month on rent, you're making $1,200 a year, 1 eviction can cost you 2 years of profit. 1 roof repair can cost you 4 or 5 years of profitability. So when you can make $300-400 a month on a single family property, you have a lot more cash flow to offset the challenges, risk, repairs, CapEx, move outs that you will encounter.
So with that being said, like what's going on in this economic environment? Like I know in about a month, I'm going to start going really hard looking for multifamilies. I'm going to start, probably talking to you more and trying to figure out like what are the best strategies to find these multifamilies. But I know back in 08 and 09, that's what I was doing. I was buying multifamilies, kind of like you, just felt like it's pennies on the dollar. I almost felt like, wow, I can't believe I'm getting them these cheap. But I didn't know what I knew now, and I didn't have the resources and the access to capital that I do now because of, the different things we learned. You learned how to find money. So like going into this, like how are you going to raise money for your next phase of expansion? And what do you think the biggest tips would be for raising capital for going into this? What, a lot of people right now are thinking, oh, there's no money. Hard money lenders are drying up. Banks are going to start restricting the amount they're lending. So how are you going about finding money for deals right now?
Absolutely. So a lot of times when I was making that transition, so let me just back up at one point. Let me work into that. I spent basically the first 14 years doing everything with my capital, making all of my significant mistakes and getting really, really experienced and really dialed in before I started raising private capital, because there was a lot of learning lessons in that time where I was being self-taught and I was learning the business, learning management, turnovers, renovations, contractors. So when I started getting introduced to private capital, I had a buddy, Josh Cantwell, that actually was teaching me about it. And it was a process that I initially had a lot of self-limiting beliefs. People, won't invest in you, or I'm coming up with all the reasons why they won't, instead of presenting the opportunity and letting them make the decision. So that was like a one hurdle point that I had to get across. I put some deals under contract, and it forced me to raise capital. So what I really realized is the reason I wasn't raising private capital before is because I wasn't putting the time, energy, and commitment into doing it. And sometimes it's like the chicken or the egg. Like, do you raise capital first to find the deal, or do you find the deal and raise the capital? But what it really comes down to is planting seeds. You can't want a garden and just go out the next day and like harvest your crop. Like, you have to prepare the ground. You have to plant seeds, which is having a lot of conversations. You have to nurture that. You have to water it. You have to follow up. You have to provide information. But truly, what people, they are not investing in a deal. They're investing in you. How confident are they of your abilities, your skills, but more importantly, how confident are they of your morals, your convictions, your decision to always do the right thing. Like we talked actually in a previous video, Chris, that
I love it. That's what I'm looking at right now, and I'm actually writing notes down.
We have both lost money on deals. We have both raised private capital, did a flip or two, and we lost capital. I actually had to dip into my 401k to make a couple investors whole at times. And there was never a moment where I paused or hesitated in doing that. That investor is not only looking for a return on their money, they're looking for the return of their money.
Can you say that again? Say that one more time, because I love that statement that you said.
So investors are not necessarily just looking for the return on their money. They're looking for the return of their money. And as we're looking at
money,
2001, 2008, or right now, when somebody's stock portfolio gets cut down 20, 30, 40, 50%, and they call their financial advisor, they're typically told, it's a paper loss, or ride it out, it'll come back.
The big lie.
Oh my goodness, the last couple of crashes, it took 10 years for it to come back. And then within less than a week, it immediately, it pops again. That financial advisor, although there is a lot of stress going on, they're not thinking about how do I make that individual whole. Like I will come out of pocket to make that, my client whole. They won't do that. I will, because I took a moral obligation. I took a fiduciary responsibility to my investors. And I honestly was thinking the other day, like, with everything going on, your mind goes everywhere. In the event if some terrible things happen and I had to lose my house, I would have more peace at losing my house, but then at the same time, making sure my investors don't lose any capital. Like, I don't want to lose my house, don't get me wrong, but I would be able to sleep at night better knowing I would lose my house, but investors are made whole, versus how do I protect myself during a situation. And if you don't have that moral obligation, that conviction to always do what's right, to make your investors whole, then you have no business to raise capital. Because things are sometimes go really well and really easy in this business, and there are times that they don't go well. When we were underwriting buying properties, no one could ever underwrite a contingency of a complete economic shutdown. It's completely out of control. But the biggest thing when people are looking to invest, what I tell them is the biggest risk they have is they're investing in me. What are my morals, values, ethics, integrity? That is the first foundation piece that has to be considered. The second piece is that person's experience. The third piece is the deal. But if the person that they're investing in doesn't have the morals, values, and integrity, and they don't have experience, you're never going to see returns. Or maybe they do have ethics, morals, values, integrity, but they're making a lot of learning mistakes, a lot of learning lessons. Then there's also not going to be able to see returns. So oftentimes what I tell people, if they want to, oftentimes they will bring capital into a deal that I'm doing, and I will mentor them through that process to really get them up to speed, so that by the time that they're in a better position to raise capital and find a deal, they can pair the capital with experience to put the deal together.
I love that you said that. And I'm just going to rephrase on a couple of those things that I was writing down. It's when I was an advisor, 16 years, everything you just said, and you weren't even in the world, right? You weren't even behind the scenes, as an advisor, is in 08, 09, that's what we said. We were like, it's just a paper loss, it'll bounce back. We're in this for the long haul. You got to invest with a long-term strategy. But that's what we were taught to say, right? All those things, we were never thinking, how do I make this person whole? We were just like, this is just the risks you take for investing, and we have to be smart about this. We have to eliminate emotion, all the rah-rah nonsense. Yep. I call it the big lie now. But, the other thing too that really is kind of unique is advisors didn't make the right calls this time. They didn't tell their clients to get out of the market. They didn't sit there and, advise their clients that we are at a high point. No, because greed. But not just because greed, because that's how they get paid. And, I think this whole economic crisis that we're in right now, this economic shift is going to drastically change the way people look at advisors, because I don't know many advisors that got their clients out of the market. They were all thinking, oh, this is just going to be temporary. It's just going to be short term. How's that working out for you right now? But I think this is going to be, we constantly talk about baby boomers and the largest, money transfer in the history of mankind. Literally the largest wealth transfer in the history of mankind. Now, you just had one of the largest, fastest drops in the market of pretty much all time, except for 1987 and a few other times. But this one's a bad one, and we haven't even seen the worst. We're still riding the coattails right now of this $2 trillion, stimulus that they did. So when this really takes hold and people don't go back to work because they can't, the markets are going to continue to fall. Money has to find a safe place to go. Money has to find that place where it's going to go to make a return. These deals that you're talking about, your ability to go out there and focus on what you said, focus on you and how you basically are going to be a person of ethics and morals, and then your deal, those 3 steps, that is going to be what people are looking for, because their advisor never made them whole. You have. Your track history is what's going to give you that future transition and that catapult. So that's the thing I'm constantly talking about with money is, in these economic collapses or recessions, money becomes very, very easy to come by, but you have to have what it takes. You have to have the knowledge, you have to have the deal, and you also have to have the ethics and the morals and the ability to know that if things go wrong, you better have plan B and plan C, because they're not going to sit there and say, oh, well, it just wasn't a good deal. I'm sorry. Oh, we lost your money. That isn't how it's going to go, because if that's how it goes, you go to jail. So how do you like that? But advisors don't go to jail. We never went to jail. That's just what we did. We and it's just, I get so mad thinking about it. I really do. And then I get so excited thinking about these podcasts and all the things we're doing to basically educate people on this wealth transfer. Because as this wealth transfer happens, where's this money going to go? Sure. It's going to go into your deals. It's going to go into every one of the listeners of this podcast deals, because that's where it has to go. So I don't know. I just get really fired up about that. And I think you should too, because all the things you're saying, like I got notes upon notes here. It's dead on right. That's what we did as advisors.
Awesome. No, it really is. And like right now I have over 40 investors. And if I were to say they each had an average of 20 years, which realistically it's more than that. They've been in the market for their entire adult careers. And again, I'm being very conservative at 20 years. It's probably closer to 25, but let's just say 20 years times 40 investors, there's 800 years of combined experience. So of these 800 years, all of my investors have had the same experience. They keep plugging money into the market, being told the lies that, again, you just went over and over and over again. And after over these 800 years experience, it's been the same results. As people are putting money away, thinking they're doing the right thing, thinking that by the time they come to retirement, they're going to have the ability to be able to live off of a nest egg. So like one thing that I'll mention to my investors is, let's just look at that model real quick. Let's say you had $1 million in your IRA, and most of the people that invest with me don't have anywhere near that. So if they wanted to draw, say, the average of 4% a year is what we're being taught. Is that about right, Chris?
That's probably about right. Yeah, it might even be a bit high for right now.
Exactly. So let's just say, let's go high, 4%. That's $40,000 a year pre-tax. So then after we're being taxed on that income, as we're drawing it out of our 401k, what are we netting?
28, 30?
28, it's at $20,000. So imagine, most people that have $1 million, you can comfortably live off of $28,000 a year. Well, what if you don't have $1 million? Well, let's say you have $500,000. Now you're $14,000 a year. And most people that I know don't have $500,000 sitting in IRA. They're $100,000 to $200,000. If you're talking less than $6,000 a year you could draw from it.
Yeah, let me just do some math. So let's just say those people, in Wall Street, in their advisor world, we use that high number of 4%. Sure. In the real estate world, as a private lender or as someone that's being the bank, that $1 million would basically get them about 90,000 pre-tax, very conservatively. And then if they only had 500,000, that's 45,000 pre-tax. And then what I'm literally just trying to figure out, where's 250,000, which that's a very common number in people's retirement. In the world that we live in, That's 22,500. So not too far off of somebody that's got $1 million. Somebody that's got $1 million in the markets playing that 40-60 efficiency frontier. My advisor said that's what it's going to be. And then in the real estate world, with a security of a tangible piece of property backing it, now that same $1 million can be generated with about, let's just say $300,000. Folks,
Exactly.
like, realize the magnitude of that. And the only difference in those two things is changing one thing in your life. And that one thing is where your money goes. That's it. Either your money's going to go to the advisors and you're going to give up control, or you're going to take back control, move it to a self-directed IRA, meet people like Jack, meet people like all you watching this, meet people like me, and learn how to be the bank and be in control of their money. That's the difference, folks. $1 million gets you 28, or 300,000 gets you about 28. I'm not doing the math, but you get the drift. It's just math. And it's so much safer because of the simple fact of you do have that tangible secured asset. But people need to learn. They need to just take that extra, couple weeks to learn the right ways to do this to protect themselves. And that's what people don't want to do. They just don't want to learn. They're like blinded by I don't know what it is. Well, if I just give it to him, he'll do it. Right? Again, I always say, how's that working out for you right now?
Exactly. And that's unfortunately, as adults, we've been taught. We've been taught nothing about financial education, nothing about financial literacy. It's just go to a professional. Well, what defines a professional? Someone that gets a certificate so that they become basically a sales member of a financial institution, and they're paid on commission to sell financial products. Like, that's not a professional. That's not somebody that has a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for you. And the other thing that's really flawed is we're taught to save for a nest egg when we should be saving for cash flow. Like, cash flow is far more easier to quantify. How much is your mortgage? How much is your car payment? How much is whatever? And how do we generate an investment to create the cash flow to cover that? And going back many years with Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, it was about how do we have an asset pay for liability? So how do you take an investment, you plug it into a deal where that interest is generating and it's covering a liability of yours?
How do you have your house pay for your car, is in other words what you're saying.
Exactly.
So simple.
It really is. When you take it and you just think of it in that nature. But, unfortunately, we can say, nobody taught me that, but also I can take the other spin of that and say, I'm going to rip something off from Gary Vaynerchuk, but we weren't born knowing how to drive a car or ride a bike. We learned that skill. So we have YouTube, we have Google, we have everything that you're providing here, Chris. Like, there are so many resources that when something we don't know, it's now our responsibility to take the initiative to learn about it. The reason we're able to provide high returns, especially, let me just say specifically with multifamily, is we have tenants that are paying rent, and that rent is what's paying the return. There's nothing, challenging about it. It's pretty straightforward. Apartments have been paying rent and been a very, very safe asset for hundreds of years. Everybody has a place that they have to go to bed at night. They have to sleep somewhere. They have to eat somewhere. It's not a get-rich-quick business. No. It takes many, many, many years for us to go through, stabilize the property, raise rents, lower expenses, get the right tenants in place, get the business dialed in, and then it becomes more passive for me. But for the first couple of years in which I'm buying a deal, there's nothing passive about it. And there's been so many apartment deals that have went bad because very successful, intelligent entrepreneurs, attorneys, physicians that are able to generate a lot of income buy these properties thinking they're mailbox money, but not realizing the thousands of hours we have to put into these properties before we stabilize them where they become more passive. And when we're buying a value add deal, the only position that's passive is a passive investor. Everything I'm doing and my team is doing is very, very active, but that's the difference of what allows our operations to be profitable versus not profitable. Unfortunately, too many people think that just putting a third-party property manager in a property just allows it to be passive. If you want to lose a bunch of money, I would please implore you to do that option. But in reality, most property managers are terrible. There are a handful of them that are great. But it's a very difficult, very challenging business. And it's a position like is there anybody you've ever met, Chris, that is like, when I grow up, I want to be a property manager and have tenants yell at me and get upset at me and
Never.
have to deal with, exactly. It's truthfully, respectfully, a very challenging position. And it takes a special person to do it. But if you're going with a third-party option and they're just hiring a brand new property manager to plunk them in your property that they found off of Craigslist, you really want to trust a multi-million-dollar property to someone that has no experience, that gets upset at tenants, that burns relationships instead of building bridges. We either build bridges or we burn bridges. You know, it's a very, very specific person that it takes to execute a deal. So, you know, again, the reason why people are comfortable investing with me, not only because we're going to do the right thing, we do everything in-house. We have 5 full-time property managers. We have multiple project managers. We have a lot of layers, a lot of processes. We do a lot of things that we've learned from our mistakes to get the business really dialed in.
Man, this has been a great episode. I got to tell you, folks, if you guys are like listening to this stuff, you are getting more knowledge than you realize you're getting. You literally probably should go back and listen to this one again, because this is some real tangible stuff that you need to be thinking about, and you need to be really devising your plan, because this is the time. The time is now. And Jack, you know, he's been doing this and he's going to continue to keep doing this because of these fundamental reasons. It's not hard to understand why he's had success and why you can have success in multifamily. The reason I don't ever really talk about multifamily on this show is because it was just too speculative before. There was just too much big money flowing into multifamilies, and I didn't like the model. I didn't like the pricing. I just didn't like a lot of things. You know, there's too many big money people throwing money in for all the wrong reasons. And what we're going to see is we're going to see how many of those people, not going to say any names, but I think you know who I'm talking about. We're going to see how many of those people make it through this, because there's going to be people like me and Jack who are going to be ready to pick up the scraps when the blood is in the streets, and the blood is in the streets, if you know what I'm saying. So Jack, out of this entire journey that you've had, what would be the biggest internal obstacle you've had to face on your journey?
Wow. So I would have to say that self-limiting beliefs and being cheap have been a couple of challenges that it's taken a lot of time to overcome. So self-limiting beliefs of, I don't know how to do that, I can't do that, I can't figure it out. You know, this has been a course of a lot of deprogramming, and all of us have some amount of deprogramming we have to do. Lies that have been taught to us, things that we believe are reality, which in fact they're not. You know, so many people will have judgments and opinions on us, but it's nothing more than just an opinion. And you really have to just be super stubborn and persistent to break through these goals. You have to be resourceful to get the answer. The answer is there. The best thing that you can do is ask, how do I figure this out? How can I figure this out? And I've really taught my team to try to come up with 3 different options to get an answer answered. So like for example, we had somebody that we got brand new washers and dryers delivered, and they couldn't figure out how to reprogram the pricing. Well, how do we figure that out? You know, we can Google it. We can go to YouTube. We can read the instruction manual. We could contact the manufacturer and get in a hold of tech support. Like, let's think about all the options first and then start to go down that path. And if we take that logistical troubleshooting process, like, there's always going to be an answer, but we have to take the extra initiative to get there. And just what it comes down to is just, there's a lot of barriers we all have to push through. Like, you have to get very comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable with being able to get loaded with a tremendous amount of stress, have your moment, think through it, and work through it. Because I've been into a lot of bad situations. We had a walk-in medical clinic that we had to shut down. We lost $600,000 of SBA loans that we are still paying off till today. And no matter how bad things got, there's always was this perspective after going through those events that we'll get through it. Just like what we're going on right now with the coronavirus and all the economic challenges, we're going to get through it. Like, it's going to have its issues, and we're going to have some setbacks, but there's going to be a lot of positive things that come out of it. We might lose some rents. We will lose some rents. We will. But on the other side of it, we're going to be able to get some amazing deals at the same time. So I'm willing to lose some rents in order to have some amazing pricing opportunities, because they're coming. So it's perspective. It's how you look at things. I was also like a firefighter paramedic for 15 years. And, I got a lot of opportunities to come into contact with people at the absolute worst times of their lives, when a spouse, a child, when somebody had passed away, like terrible, terrible events. And it provided a perspective of just, is no matter what stress we think we're under, there's somebody that's dealing with it way worse than you and I are right now. Like financial stress is legitimate stress, but having terminal cancer or losing your child to a car accident, that's a whole different level. You can't recover that. You can recover capital. So it just, having those experiences really did provide an outlet of just like really thinking about, how bad is this really? We can get through it, and we're going to get through it.
Yeah, I agree. We're all in this together, folks. And this has been a great episode. You guys have gotten some amazing golden nuggets out of this. Jack, if they want to find you or get a hold of you, how would they do that?
So my website is Petrick Property Group, and that is Petrick, petrickpropertygroup.com.
All right. So, folks, thank you all for joining me for another episode. It's time for you guys to go out there and begin your journey or continue your journey to becoming a rebel banker. And it starts with taking action. It starts with application of the knowledge you just learned, or the application of the knowledge you're going to get from the books. Also, folks, if you haven't already heard, we've got something special. The movement. Are you part of the movement, or are you sitting back waiting for life to pass you by? The movement is Money School TV. So you guys join us for the movement. We're changing people's lives. I'm changing my life. Every single person in my network is part of the movement, and they're there to help you get through these tough financial times, but not just get through them, because that would be boring, how to excel and how to literally blaze your own path. So join us for Money School TV at moneyschoolrei.com/TV, and we'll see you as part of the movement. Thank you all for joining me for another episode of the Real Estate Money School. See you the next time.
Chris, if I could put a quick plug in. I had been introduced to infinite banking a number of years ago, and at that time, it just really didn't connect. When I had finished watching your video on infinite banking and the amazing presentation you put together, like, it just plugged all those missing chains and gaps of information that I didn't understand. So I got to say, you have done an absolutely amazing job of taking the complexity, like coveted secrets of financials, stewardness, investing, and breaking it down for people to really understand it. And guys, I got to say, like, knowledge is power. Knowledge is everything. When somebody's looking to go to the Olympics, they go to the best coaches they can. Like, every one of us, in order to hit the highest level, every human being is mentored. LeBron James is mentored. Everybody that runs at a high level is mentored. And if you don't take the time to invest in your mentoring, you have no idea how much money you're leaving on the table. When I initially was introduced to mentoring, I had limiting beliefs of looking at that as an expense. That's going to cost this much. I was so off the course in that. That is not an expense. That is an investment. If you can take a $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 investment in knowledge and apply it and turn that into 6 and 7 figures, it would be ludicrous not to do that. So I just want to put a plug in there. Take this seriously, people. Listen to Chris. Plug in the books. The books are probably between $15, $20. Like, it's a pretty,
that's $20 right there. And that's all about what you just talked about, the infinite banking concept, the biggest mystery of the millionaires.
Grab the book, plug into it, learn the skills, because when we were born, these were skills. Everything we do right now had to be taught. Nothing, besides being selfish and trying, that's about the only thing we came into the world with. But like, we had to build the skills upon that. So please grab Chris's resources and build the skills.
Thank you, Jack. And thank you all for watching the Real Estate Money School. See you the next time.
Thanks, guys.